Hey, good morning, YouTube. So I wanted to give you a ride report on the Sodapop Fender install. So I went out on a ride last weekend. It was a couple of days after the last rain, so there were still some puddles on the paved bike paths. So I also did some gravel roads on some of the levees down along San Francisco Bay. And what I tried to do, which I normally don't, is I tried to go through every puddle and whatnot that I could. So you can see here on the front, the Fender did a pretty good job. You get a little splash up on the fender, and then from about here down, because the fender stops right there, you get mud splashed up on the frame from about halfway down to the bottom bracket. It's not perfect coverage like you'd get with a full fender, but yeah, it worked pretty well. Didn't really get any bad splashing. And let's take a look at the rear fender here. So here's the rear fender. My little filler piece in there worked pretty well. So it kept all the mud on this side of the fender, and the mechanism here and everything stayed nice and clean. So that was a good result. So in the back, I had used a piece of wire here to try to hold the fender up so it doesn't rattle. And I found that didn't work as well as I hoped, because every time you hit a bump, you'd get a thump from the back. Like you'd hit a crack in the pavement, or go from pavement to gravel or gravel to pavement. You'd get this whack from the back as the fender popped. So what I did was took a piece of closed cell weather stripping here and put that right underneath. So now it still thumps a bit, but it's quiet. I may go back to my piece of wire to compress that foam a bit. I don't like things going bang when you're riding. You have to look back and, did I hit something, or, oh, it's just the fender. So we'll see how that works. So the one other minor issue I ran into, you can see some of the water dripping down here. This is the slotted hole that you can use to adjust where the fender rides. So what I found was, riding through longer puddles, or you were riding in the rain, the water off the tire gets thrown up through this hole and it starts dripping down here. It might not be a problem, but I was thinking, since I only need to use the upper end of that slotted hole, I just have some black electrical tape here. Yeah, right in there. I think just cover that up with a piece of tape, and that should seal that up. So the only slight concern I have, I don't know if you can see down in there where the mud has built up, where this bracket attaches at the bottom. That might be a problem area if you're riding in a lot of mud. That bracket inside there kind of wants to trap the mud in there, and this is probably the tightest spot on the fender right here. If that's a problem, what I might need to do is move the screw to the bottom end of that slotted hole, raise this part up a bit. You can move this part of the fender up and down, and then you can also raise this clamp up. Of course, then if I do that, I'll have to extend my piece on the bottom too. So I do need to keep an eye on that, just to see how this gap right here where it's tight, see if that's a problem. But yeah, we'll have to go out. I'll probably go out this weekend and give this another test ride up in the mountains, see how it does on the slightly muddier trails.
Well, good afternoon, YouTube. So here's why I need the fenders up here. This is the bike trail is going up Stevens Creek Canyon, and the trail is basically a creek. Coming down the hill here, fenders kept the bike pretty dry. There's a lot of runoff. It'll probably be like this for probably 6 weeks before it dries up. But let me show you some more storm damage a little farther down the trail here. Okay, here we are a little farther down the trail here. Right over there at the base of that tree is an old wrecked car, because this used to be a paved road up here. but a long time ago it washed out at this point. And if we look up on the hill there, you'll see how it's all eroded, red rock with gullies and all that. Now, this is the San Andreas Fault. One of the branches of it runs right through here, I think. This slid out like 2 years ago. The trail used to go right down around that point. And there's a geocache someplace in here. I haven't found that yet. It's called Slide, because this is just a big landslide here. And this whole hump of dirt here is part of the landslide. And let's go down a little farther and take a look here. Yeah, so right in here is where the alternate or bypass trail was moved to 2 years ago. And even this just slid out in the last 2 months since I've been up here. And you can see this whole area. You can see the different color pulverized rock there. So this rock, I believe, has all been broken up by the fault moving. And you can see how the water just gushes out of here. The water doesn't flow over here. It actually is underneath, and it just liquefies this pulverized rock, and it just washes down there. And then if we turn over here, you've got the same thing going down that way. So you got this broken up rock face here, and that comes all the way down here and comes across here, and then you've got the same thing right up in here. There's the fault kind of runs right through this area, or at least one branch of it. And so all this rock in here just gets pulverized. You can see it's just like sand. You can see how the water is just seeping out of the soil. So I imagine this whole thing probably just turns to a liquid slurry and just flows down the hill. And then the soil on top falls in, and we might be losing this part of the trail here. It's down to just a couple of feet wide. 8 weeks ago, this was solid here, but this whole area has washed out. Must not have slid here for a long time, because there was an old tree, and I think there's a geocache someplace around here. I haven't found it yet. The problem is the whole backside over there is washed out, so hopefully the geocache is still there. But yeah, pretty impressive washout here. And I think this is what washed out the road initially, maybe back in the early 80s, I'm guessing, because we had a really heavy rain year in the early 80s. And when I first came up here about 10 years ago, this slide looked really fresh. And yeah, even this part here is starting to go. There's a bit of a crack in the soil over there, so this whole piece here is sliding downhill. So who knows what's going to happen with the next big rainstorm, but at least it's still passable, and the creek is dropping. Still pretty deep to cross. I talked to a guy, he said it's up over your knees if you wade through it. I think I'll give it a few weeks before I try to cross the creek up there. Let the water level drop a little bit. But a nice spring day. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.